You're listening to Cosmic Consciousness, the show that connects with today's way showers and conscious advocates who use real-life superpowers to catapult human evolution.
Welcome to Cosmic Consciousness. This is Jules, and I'm so excited to have Tonya here with us today. As the Director of Superpower Experts, Tonya Dawn Relka spends her days convincing people superpowers are real and recruiting other powerful mutants. During her career as a government special agent, she explored the human psyche, honed her superpowers, and cracked the code of enlightened self-actualization. Tonya continues as a lifelong student of energy manipulation, transmutation, clairsenses, intentional molecular creation, and so much more. She believes everyone has the power to create a multi-dimensional existence and master the human experience. Tonya, I'm so happy to have you as the guest on my very first show. So welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you. It's such a delight to be here with you. We have so much fun and the synergy is fantastic. I can't tell you how excited we are to have you as part of the Superpower Up Network and that you've chosen to come play with us, especially in the cosmic consciousness conversation. It's
Oh
so
my
exciting.
gosh. Thank you. Yeah, and it's so exciting. And it's, I feel so honored to just be part of the platform that you have created. And that's kind of where I wanted to start. Cosmic consciousness is about coding the new human. And like Disrupt Reality and all your superpower platform, it's been seen as being a pretty advanced way of looking at the power that we have. And if we choose to tap into it to become divinely perfect beings we are meant to be, it really is the pathway to the new human. And I feel like this is something that we have in common, targeting that 1% that are ready to exist beyond imagined limitations. So, I want to kind of start there and just what it makes you so passionate about speaking to this 1%.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna sort of dance around that question for a second. I remember in my graduate program, this is so funny that it just brought me here. I'm sure it's totally on purpose, but I remember a professor pulling me aside in my grad program because a lot of the content that I was dealing with there was in the kind of in-group, out-group dynamics, kind of social identity dynamics. I did a lot in critical theory, but what it translated to was a very different way of approaching things like diversity training, and everything was just kind of a little bit higher, right? A little bit bigger, a little bit more advanced, and I that's kind of been a theme in my existence. It's like I've always been like the only female to do this, or the only white person to do this, or the only straight person to do this, or the only, right? And there's always this like desire to be in that. And she pulled me aside and she looked at me, she goes, why are you bothering with, I mean, you could go into corporate America and make so much. I mean, just you are literally designed to be successful within the construct, right? The construct is designed by people like you, for people like you. Why are you bothering with these topics and these kind of, to help people in these ways? And I just remember feeling so lost by that question. Like, well, like, did I have an option? Like it was like I was super confused by it. And so that's the same feeling I think that your question just invoked, is a sense that like the flippant response that I wanted to give you was like, I'm not sure there's a choice, but and then of course there's always a choice. But it feels like that compulsion, right? When we stand in our gaps, when we know our role, when we know who we are, when we know what we've agreed to do here, it's like, you kind of get that confused dog look, like, wait, was there an option? Like there was another way? Like who knew? And so, I would say that answers that question. It is mine to do. In the way that I do it and how I do it and where I do it, with whom I do it, like it is clearly mine to do. And I can't imagine trying to shove myself into anybody else. This is the most expansive, freeing, powerful, and amazing I've ever felt in my existence. Like, why would I try anything else, kind of thing? And it's, so it while I want to say it I don't have a choice in it, I know that I made that choice.
Absolutely. And what I hear you saying as you're talking, and I can feel the inspiration behind your words, it's, like you keep saying, it's what I was here to do. And I think that when we're walking our path and we're truly doing what we're here to do, that inspiration is just so free flowing that we don't even think of it as being anything but who we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it feels weird to this is the conundrum, right? So for all of you who are like, oh yeah, that feels good. Like the weirdest thing in all of this for me, and I was just reflecting with a client early today on this, was I remember sitting in a space and kind of knowing my life and knowing the memories of it and kind of the stories of who I am and all these other things. And I remember as soon as I crossed into that abstract frequency, like really truly embodied it, I remember seeing brand new memories and experiences and new stories and all these other explanations and descriptions of things that existed all around the same kind of touch points, timeline, everything, but just a different perspective, like a whole different
Mm.
experience of it, a different frequency. And as soon as I saw that and was able to comprehend it, it like dimensionality all made sense. Right. And it's like, oh, I get it. And so it was that plus this, you know, when you're in your gap because everything just clicks, right? So all that the striving and I mean, I know you've experienced this. Like there's this when you're in your home frequency and you're standing in your gap, you just build effortlessly. Like you're like instead of like standing on the ground level trying to build a skyscraper like brick by brick, like you're hovering over it, like moving things like little tinker toys, right? You're like, oh, and I could put this here and I could do this here and I could do this. Like that's the difference. And everything just works exponentially better.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's how you know.
I love that. And and we have to go into a really quick break, but when we get back, I have to tell you something that's so funny about what you just said. Um,
Perfect.
Tony, you are just truly disrupting reality. And all of you listening, and I feel you're part of this disruption that Tony is bringing into the world. What a gift to have somewhere to go to just like plug in, release from social consciousness, and start listening to really high vibe conversations. So we're just going to
Mm.
take a really quick break. But before we do, if somebody wanted to do some specific work with you, how would they find you?
Oh, great question. Thank you so much. So our superpowerexperts.com site, you just go to the superpower programs tab. There's a little video and here's the thing, folks, like if it resonates with you, I mean, our people, it's always a yes, right? So there's no like, oh, I should be doing it. No, 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 none of that. Like if it's right, you know the resources, you know exactly which program, and it resonates. It's almost again like a compulsion. We have people all the time sign up and we're like, so why are you here? They're like, I don't know. Like
Pretty
I just
sure
had
that's
to
what I
do it.
did.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, I
Perfect.
love it. I love it. Okay, so stay tuned because when we get back, we are actually going to talk about living in your home frequency.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Don Rekla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter. We now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz. And as Neva Lee Rekla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world.
We are back from the break, and I have Tonya here with Superpower Experts, and we are talking about the 1% that are living or awakening to their superpowers, creating a high frequency existence. So I just had to laugh because you were talking about living in your home frequency. And I know you hold your clients in the highest frequency in this physical plane. And I call this being in your home frequency. So when you said that, I was like, oh, she uses that too. And I feel like this is such a big part of becoming the new human. So I was going to just see if you would talk a little bit about why you feel it's important, and also maybe why it's so hard for us to do sometimes when we kind of allow ourselves to go out into the quote unquote real world, why it's hard for us to hold our high frequency in those situations at times.
Great question. A couple of questions there. One, I want to flesh out this notion of becoming the new human and the synergy that you're speaking of. We operate off of a concept we call synergistic collaboration, right? And I mean, that's kind of the way, right? Everybody wants to coin their own phrase. But beyond just the semantics, I think it's really important to differentiate because again, just like everything else, it exists at dimensions. So we first teach people to cooperate. Like, can we all just freaking get along, right? And then the collaboration thing is, can we come together and work together in a way that isn't just a everybody get along, but really everybody kind of contributing would be the collaboration level. And then synergistic collaboration is where we know and recognize and trust the energy between us to create. So what it's doing is it's building relationship entities, if you will. So it's taking into account and harnessing the power of the fact that you and I sitting here together, it looks like there's two entities, but we've got you, me, and then we've got the third entity, which is our relationship, right? And this is just at the basic of levels. We're not even going to take into account like all the various aspects within you and me, and then who's listening and all those other things. But just at a basic numbers level, we're going to look at that. And so two gets you three, right? Well, three gets you what? Six. And so there's this always this like exponential impact that we don't take into account. So the only way we're truly going to be able to come together and work together is if we allow divinity or spirit or source or whatever you want to call it, the universe, to have a presence as well. Because in those situations, we actually are able to create win-win-win scenarios. So we run everything, we do everything kind of backwards in the sense that we start there. So even all of our programs where most people want personal development, first, we refuse to even have those conversations until the concept of, well, who are we comes into play, right? Because it has an impact on what we do. And if we go the opposite way, we're just going to be spinning our wheels. And I think that that lends itself really nicely to the second part of what you were talking about, and why I love the fact that we've gravitated together, because where you build and where you stand in your gap and your absolute brilliance in the coding and skincare worlds and the frequencies and all of the work that you do there is in such a beautiful complementary space to us that we get to demonstrate what this looks like. You know, we weren't all just called to evolve and to awaken, and to keep walking up our own mountain. Like we have to work together. We have to figure out, because that's how we're exponentially more powerful. You know, biblically, where two or more of you gather in my name, there also will I be. It works. Well, you don't have to believe in the Bible. Like it's a physics kind of component, an energetic component. Well, that answers your other question. And the reason why it's so incredibly challenging for us to maintain these higher frequencies is because you talk about 1%. So all of us are it in our social sphere. Each one of us is paving a path in our social sphere. We're usually the ones encouraging others to do the same. Well, that means that there's no way shower there, right? There's no one ahead of you. Like no one can walk your path ahead of you. And so it gets really confusing when you're called in to kind of be a guide or be a teacher, be a leader, be somebody in this space. And then when you look to the outer world, to the projection, to affirm for you what you're hearing, and you're not seeing it because that world was built in the frequency you just came from, and we're not taught to be comfortable in the lag time. And energy seeks to balance itself. It's basic physics. And so it's much easier to get pulled back into a denser frequency or reality because you have memory of being there and everything around you is in support of that, versus holding yourself and bringing all of that up to you. And that's where we train people. We teach them to detach from their energy fields and to be able to observe and to be able to look back and all these components, because otherwise, if you're trying to do this work but you don't know how to not be consumed by the world, ultimately you're set to just perpetuate all that already exists. And so it's like Jedi training, right? There's nuances to this work. Like it is training. Like you have to really disentangle yourself and then rebuild. I don't know, maybe going through basic training, you know, I was 27 with a master's degree when I went through basic training, perhaps I was observing more than I realized. And it's like, you really have to break everything down and build it all back up again if you want to change. And
Absolutely.
it's complex. So, but those are some basic principles.
Yeah, and I love how you say it's a practice, because it truly is a practice. There's one thing that I do every day before I leave the house, because my house is my sanctuary. It's just my daughter and I, and she's just the coolest thing. And when my other daughter comes home, we just all just have so much fun together. And there's never any time where I feel like I have to work in order to interact. But when I go into the quote unquote real world before I leave the house, I say to myself and to my higher self that every person that I come in contact, that my high self and their high self are going to meet and have the experience from there. And then what it does is it actually helps me go into the observer, because as all I'm doing is observing our high selves, like hanging out, and I don't have to do anything more than that.
I love it. But it reminds me, I remember this woman. I cannot remember her name, but I can remember standing, and I don't know about all of you, but we have this running kind of joke that God's in the bathroom, right? And so we have the most like unique experiences, like either getting downloads or interacting with people in public restrooms or whatever. But I remember I looked at her and I kind of did a double take at one point. I'm like, she was just glowing, like really just glowing. And she kind of smiled. And I remember she goes, "Oh, it's magic." And I was like, "Huh?" And she said, it's a spell I put on me. It's magic. And she explained this whole thing, and she total conviction. It was such a beautiful explanation of yeah, and similar to what you just expressed, like I just ask that those who have eyes to see are able to see, and those who don't just don't, and it was kind of like her way of not wasting her time, so that the people who stepped forward, were the ones that she had synergy with, and there was some sort of catalytic activation that occurred between them to indicate significance, right? Because majority of the world is kind of white noise. To me, it is. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's, I always know when there's significance because it's obvious to me because I'm attuned to those frequencies. But this was years ago now, and I remember it was really eye opening for me. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to try that. I'm going to do that. And some of it requires you to be willing to play,
Right.
because none of it makes any freaking sense. And in fact, we had a client today ask that question of like, well, if you can't judge it on logic, then how do you know if it's true? And it's like, wow, what a great freaking question. Because isn't that what we're all trained to look for? And through schooling and programming and everything. And when you're going to use other indicators to determine truth, you have to hone those skills. So, right. So let's talk about like the work you do and the coding and stuff, because while it sounds really cool and people get super excited about it, like I'm not sure people understand the real, I want to say gravity, but importance of it, because without that, we have no mechanism, no instrument to walk in the worlds that we claim we want to live in.
Absolutely. It's funny because I actually just said this to my daughter the other day, and I'm like, as you continue through life, there's going to be times that if it makes sense, you shouldn't do it, because it means that you're just doing something you've already done or somebody told you
Beautiful.
to
Yeah.
do. And to really like expand beyond that, you do the things that don't make sense. And so I think that's kind of what you're saying. And as far as in the coding and what I'm doing with the skincare and with codes, it truly was just doing the next right step. And I think we talked about this in another interview that we had, and we talked about blind faith and what that meant. And it was such an odd thing because I thought we were both saying the same thing, but from opposite ends. And that's one thing I love about conversations with you, is that a lot of times we'll say the same thing, but in completely different ways.
Well, and I love that you bring that up, and that you bring it up in the way that you just did, because it makes people uncomfortable, right? We don't we don't like to think of ourselves as being contradictory. We most of us have no idea just how many contradictory aspects we hold at one time, right? And so when we aren't comfortable with that within ourselves, we're certainly not comfortable when other people are kind of not in agreement, right? It's like mom and dad are fighting, right? We're not comfortable with that, right? That's that whole motif. well, what if part of being in this new world isn't like we have to get comfortable with arguing, but we have to have the courage to clearly stand in our gaps, and in doing so, and a willingness to come together and have conversations from that place, then we can see the similarities. But if we either aren't willing to, then it feeds this story of separation, right? And any sort of
Mhm.
dualism, and none of that can stand. Like the new space that we're moving into, there the whole point is to disentangle dualism, and anywhere where there's separation, well, if we're not willing to come together and have a conversation because quote unquote I don't agree with you, right? This is the whole reason social media is such a, so much on fire now, is because of the awareness that a lot of people are having that like what are we actually feeding here, right? It's not the devil. Like it's a phenomenal tool, and I'm very excited to see what some people are going to be able to do with it once they come into realization why it
Mm.
exists, beyond, above and beyond the challenge of it. um, but it's show my, our guidance was very clear. Like we have to demonstrate how to come together with someone who's seemingly in opposition, seemingly competition, seemingly in disagreement, and have real conversations to show people like there's no threat there, right?
None at
You being
all.
brilliant in your space and using different vernacular, and maybe they don't even match up. Maybe we're saying completely different things. Like, can we be okay with it? Can I still love you?
Aw, you're so sweet. Yeah, and I think, really when we go into that place of the unknown, everyone is going to travel there through their own experience. And it could be that they're both even having the same experience, but come out on the other side saying completely different things. And I think that's really a beautiful thing because we need all those different perspectives and stories because and I don't mean stories as in like a story of a program, but just the experience of the story so that others can connect to them in different ways because not everybody's going to hear the story in the same way. So it's just is important to have different experiences and different ways of viewing things.
Well, and I really believe that that's what I'm so excited about with this show, is because with everything, like something opens up and it's the dangle and it's beautiful and expansive, and then the critics come, and right now a lot of the like oneness, woo woo, spiritual whatnot is coming under some scrutiny because at a certain frequency it doesn't create, right? It doesn't build, it doesn't converge, and so it's a lot of like kumbaya circular talk, but no real movement. And so when we start to say, no, you know what, I don't think it has to be an either or. I think we can take lessons learned and we can do this kind of both and perspective. And the only place that we're able to do that is in a cosmic consciousness level. And when more and more people realize that these other frequencies are solely designed to keep us entrapped in that competitive mindset, pitting ourselves against each other, whether it's comparison, competition. I mean, you're in the skincare industry. I mean, goodness gracious, like you want to talk about some dense energies you're trying to move over there. Like anything that has to do with health and wellness and beauty and everything else, there's just so much density and trapped in there. The only place we can really connect is in that highest aspect, and then allow that to inform everything else. Because if we stay in those other frequencies, we're stuck in this I don't agree, or I have an opinion, or opinions, thoughts, all of that stuff exists to keep us separate. Well, when we
Absolutely.
refuse to buy into that and we kind of elevate first, right? Tap
Mm.
into that first. Now I can love you and I can see your brilliance and I can see the symbolism and what you're saying, and I can read through the lines, and I'm not getting stuck in some sort of like word that somebody said to me when I was in the third grade and I was crying in the corner, and I've got that in my body. And so you saying that to me makes me really feel very threatened by you and not safe with you. Therefore, I'm going to wall off this aspect of me, right? All of that's happening totally unbeknownst to most of us. And when
Wow.
we kind of go into that connection space, there it is. Now it's again, you're looking over the skyscrapers versus like trying to like climb up from the inside. There's a perspective that your show brings because of the work that you've done and what you embody, that is our best chance for connecting first, and
Hmm.
then allowing that to inform what we create.
That's beautiful. That's so beautifully said. And I think it's so fun year to go to the competition and with the skincare and all of that. And, and it is skincare, but it's a pathway. It's a pathway to reaching these higher states of consciousness and really going into a place of oneness and really reflecting not only our inner beauty, but reflecting what that can be for others as well. So thanks for bringing that up because we haven't talked much about that. So, we're getting closer. So, but I had one more question that I did want to ask you, and that's we keep talking about the new human, and I keep bringing that up because that's kind of what I see is human evolution as we become a different species as we really elevate our frequencies and change our DNA. So I just wanted to you're so good at reading energy patterns and you talk about cellular like working with the molecular structure. What is your vision of the new human?
Wow, that's a powerful question. It's interesting because my work isn't really in the like the physicality, the body stuff and everything. And so I really enjoy where you and I connect into because I get to kind of drift off of you and I'm reminded of a lot of the insights. My pathway has been I get a ton of insights and a ton of information, and I'm asked to trust at a very, very, very high level,
Mm.
and then I get clarity right at certain places. And so you're reminding me of some concepts that we birthed early on, and they just kind of sat there and marinated around um, one of them was called intentional molecular creation, and it started off kind of tongue in cheek, like truly we should be able to just move our bodies and manipulate them. And then I was like, okay, well, why can't we? Like, if someone's like, oh, I want bigger boobs or I want a smaller nose or whatever. Like, how come it doesn't just happen? And so I really went into kind of a study of that. But clearly, I'm not designed to teach it. It was just showing me where some areas are that need to get expanded out. And so that's a component is recognizing how cells work, right? Most of us um, despite all the advancements and everything and in awareness, we tend to operate in more of a Newtonian physics type of
Mhm.
mentality, and we still think that our bodies are separate from each other and everything else. And so they what's being challenged there are all kinds of things to include privacy, to include safety, security. I mean, you start telling people about mind reading and empathy and the fact that there is no separation between us, and immediately it's like it's an invasion, right? It feels very threatening. And so the new human component is much more fluid than what we have witnessed before. I've also seen light bodies. I mean, we can go way out there. I've
Mhm.
downloaded information about androgyny and why all of that's occurring, and the egg sperm mythology and where that those explanations are going, and how people are going to be how we're able to bring entities here and what kind of format and what we're willing to accept at this point, not willing to accept on a social consciousness perspective. And so it's all on purpose, and it's all kind of walking toward this merging. And I think that at the end of all of it, people are like, well, why? What are we doing? And ultimately, whether it was a challenge, a game, a prison, a test, I don't know, but all of it, from my vantage point, walks us back to oneness.
Yeah.
Now, do we want to be able to harness oneness here with the friction of the construct and be able to create from that place? Perhaps that's a good theory. Are we walking back to oneness because we feel trapped here? We want to go home? Perhaps that I've certainly felt that way before too. Is it all one? And I don't know. I can't speak with authority on that, but I do see the patterns and the signs, and it all can be explained as leading closer to oneness. So that does feel very true to me. And in order to do that, the all of those components of, I mean, the body as blood and cells, and it's like that's not what the body is at all. Like you're fat. It's like no, you're not fat. Like it's not fat. Like it's fear. Like let's talk about what it really
Mm.
is. Like and to start to peel back some of these layers and understand why they exist, because that allows them to get integrated and reveal what comes next. So the construction of the world, I think, is left to you and a lot of others. I create spaces, and then I get to watch all the creation, and so that's what I'm reading. But I mean, there's people making huge exponential advancements all the time, and so things shift pretty rapidly. The one constant is that relationship with the divine and each other and walking toward oneness.
I love it. Every time you say oneness, I can connect to your frequency of where you're saying that from, and my heart just like flutters.
Oh, yay,
It's
very
really
cool.
beautiful. Now I just got chills all over. So you
Oh,
really
well,
are
you honor
doing
me.
such amazing work, and
Mm,
and you can hold the frequency of your words, and that's such an amazing thing because I think our communication is so beyond our words. It's through the frequency. And that's truly what makes you so amazing is that
mm.
you're communicating way beyond your words.
Oh, you're so sweet. Can you believe, Justin, I used to teach this at counterintelligence agents?
I know. I was telling my daughter that, and she was like, "I want to see a picture of her," and she was like, "She looks like us."
Oh, it's
It's
awesome.
so cute. It blows my mind. It's just amazing. What a journey you're here to take. Amazing. Well, you know what?
Beautiful.
We're getting close to the end of the show. So why don't you just one more time tell everyone how they can find you?
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Well, you can find me lots of places, but our hub is superpowerexperts.com. If you go to superpowerexperts.com/the net, you can download our app, and that's where you can stream all of our shows and all fun, yummy, free content there and be part of our ecosystem. So that's a great place. And again, if this work really what resonates with you and you're feeling a big yes, then I recommend you click on the Superpower Programs tab and just be in that. Just sit in it for a minute, read the content, watch the video, come back to it in a day or so. Like be in it, live it, breathe it for a moment. And if it's still a really deep yes for you, then reach out to us and we can talk about what that might look like. Other than that, consume the material or find your space in the world, folks. There's so many people doing great, amazing things. Just have the courage to look and follow your curiosity.
I love that. Follow your curiosity. Is there any other thought or something that we didn't cover that you just feel you want to share with everyone today?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this. Yes, listen to this show. Follow what Jules is doing. Check out her skincare. I've been meaning to tell you, like, I didn't ask her permission, but I'm going to share anyway. Like, Neva loves your products, like, loves. Like, if she just, anyway, like, this kid, yeah. I can't, we would probably take another episode just to explain to you, like, her enthusiasm, just how much she is 100% all into your products. And, it's just remarkable what Jules is doing. And so I highly recommend you pay attention to this show, that you follow what she's doing. Go check out her skins. Let's tell them where they can go to find out your skincare stuff.
Right.
Because
Oh, yeah. Thanks for
yeah,
asking. Yeah, it's eternalgoldskincare.com.
yeah, it is I mean, she's way, 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 way ahead of her time, folks. And so for those of you who you've been around us for a while, this doesn't surprise you. If you're new to our network, we talk about these crazy things all the time, but it is not just skincare, and it's worth it to kind of take a peek at, especially this beautiful body of work that she's bringing forward on the own codes. And you're just going to want to keep your eye on this one. So the podcast is going to give you a great opportunity to connect into her and her world and her work, and our synergy is anyway just magic. So I'm excited to see everything else that's now coming down the line for that.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. And it does. Life is just magical. It's so much fun, and it feels like magic just to be on this platform and to be able to co-create with you. So thank you, Tonya, for the wonderful work that you're doing in the world. Like you
Mm.
truly are a way shower. And you know what I see you as is you're this artist, and there's just this big, huge white canvas, and as all you get to do is create what comes to you, and it's just so beautiful. So it's been such an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And until next time, go and live to your highest potential.
Beautiful.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.